Welcome to Behind the Build. I am your host, Jonathan Jacobs, and today I have with me a practice, I would say an institution in Canada, founded in 1987, recognized with over 400 awards, including 18 Governor General medals in architecture, Canada's highest honor. They have designed over 31 million square feet in education, healthcare, arts and culture, government, corporate, hospitality, recreation, and mixed-use development. With over 130 employees, I have today with me the founders of KPMB. I have Bruce, Kuwabara, Marianne McKenna, and Shirley Blumberg. Thank you for joining me on this. I have been looking forward to this for quite some time. I had connected with Nina quite a while ago and Alina. I was really happy when they said that the three of you would be willing to do this, to sit down together and have a chat about what it has been like to see the evolution of four minds come together and develop what this is.
Before we get into the conversation, I want to mention something that ties directly to what we'll talk about later on. That in architecture, every detail of a project has to count. On a current collaboration with Drew Mandel, that idea has been front and center. We're working with large-scale curtain walls and curved glass that is both beautiful and incredibly complicated to install. Don't fast forward this, you're going to want to hear this. We partner with the Doors on this project, and they've been handling glass and installations for decades, and they understand the realities of getting something this ambitious built. What excites me is how they're continuing to expand that service. Soon, they'll be fabricating aluminum frames right here in Toronto, which not only gives us tighter control, but also eliminates the shipping and delivery times we'd normally be dealing with when materials are coming out of Poland. That means faster turnaround time from shop drawing approval to fabrication to installation. And on top of that, they've just invested in their own spider crane. Now, you might not care, but it's called the Jeco SPX 650, which can handle up to 5 tons. It can extend, from my understanding, up to 75 feet. We didn't use it on the project that I've referenced with Drew, but going forward, it means they won't have to rely on rentals, and installations will be much smoother, simpler, and fully in-house. It's those kinds of commitments that allow us to deliver projects where every element, from design intent to installation, is seamless. If you want to learn more about the Doors, email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, @waldenhomes.ca, and I'll connect you with the amazing team that they've got at the Doors. But for now, let's go back to the founders.
And so, with that, I know that a lot of you that are listening have been looking forward to this, so I will stop talking and say first, just again, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me. I came to your offices. That's where we're recording today. Beautiful new offices. I will start things off by saying I have interviewed quite a number of people that have come through your amazing institution, and that's what it is. Heather Doubledam, Rob Costello, Kelly Buffy, Drew Mandel, Jen Cullitz, Andrew Hill, Gabriel Fain, among others. And there isn't a single person that I spoke to about working here that did not enjoy their time. I'm actually going to read, to start things off. Rob, I apologize to you, but I'm doing it. I'm going to read you what Rob Costello wrote to me this morning. My time at KPMB in Toronto and Montreal were some of the most formative years of my life as an interning architect. The environment the partners created at KPMB fostered a familial quality where creativity, discipline, and design excellence were maintained at a wonderfully high level throughout my time there. I am beyond grateful for the opportunity of having been a part of this family.
Wow, that's lovely.
Wonderful.
Yeah. He's a wonderful guy.
Right? So with that, and having established all of these things, I thought it'd be really great if we could do what I've done with many other people in the past and have you start at the beginning. Okay? What stage of your life did you develop this love for design? And it could have been at any stage. You could have been 3, could have been 18. You tell me. Okay, so I'll start it off with you, Marianne.
I grew up in Montreal.
Yeah.
And I had 2 closets in my bedroom. There were 2 beds, so it was always the extra guest bed. I turned up some amazingly interesting people in the other bed. But I also had 2 closets. And the second closet was where I began building. And I could use any materials. And the best part of it was that you could shut the door and the whole thing was in there. So I spent a lot of time in that closet building things with pine cones and stuff and rags and building houses in a way. But at the end of it, I came to this would be built, and then you think, I'd say to my mother, well, what do I do? She said, well, now you play in it. I was like, ugh, I'm not doing that. Take it apart and build it again. And so that, and then I drew as a child. I drew things that my parents really gushed over, which in later life I found, and they were really sort of surprising. There was the symphony orchestra. Very disappointing to me in my mature life, but very favorite drawing of my parents. And then, life goes on and you're looking for something that kind of bridges. I'm from a professional family. Most of us are professionals, and architecture was something that combined the arts and a love of the arts and the ability to make things and do things with a kind of entrepreneurial, go out and get it kind of spirit that was in my research-oriented family. They're inventors in the field of medicine and researchers. So it's kind of that, and the fact that it was a sustainable thing that you could do it all your life was hugely part of that. But these are things that, in reflection later down the road, you realize have been very influential and kept you on the road. Just say one more thing. As Robertson Davies said, life begins when you make a commitment. I've said that to my kids, and they say, what are you talking about? When you make a commitment to architecture or to a spouse or somebody or anything, it limits your choice and your options, but you also have the great gift of being able to focus. So you're not dragged away into other emotional vortexes around a relationship or around other careers. I should have been a doctor. You really you carry on with this endeavor. And it's, one of the beautiful things is that it doesn't finish. There's no freedom 55 or 65 or 75. There doesn't seem to be, a predictable end to this, the way we're doing it, and how much engagement and fun we still have doing it.
My wife hates this analogy. She will hate this analogy, but I see it as like the bronco, the horse that's just out there running around wild, versus the stallion that's a racehorse with the blinders on. Right. And now you're focused on where you're going. You're going around that track.
And the very cool thing about architecture is about everything. There's no topic that you can't engage, no place you can go, no material you don't touch that isn't part of an architectural evolution of an idea.
And so where did you go to university, and what was one of your favorite memories from university?
I got catapulted out of Montreal through all the political situation. And I went to school, college in the States, like what they call college, Swarthmore College, liberal arts degree. And then I took a year off to work as a graphic designer and thought, this is my life. Then I went into architecture, and I did for 3 years at Yale University. Gained my master's, and then launched into employment after that.
Into the field. Okay. Thank you. Bruce, I'm going to skip past you because I'm going to have the ladies go first.
Very gently.
Please, Shirley.
Okay. So the interesting thing is we all come from very different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And mine is very, very different. And I grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, which was, to say the least, kind of just coming out of the dark ages. Highly problematic, but incredibly beautiful city to grow up in, but a highly problematic society. Anyway, my parents had commissioned a house for themselves that the contractors completed the day before I was born. So I was brought up in a classical modernist Corbusian house, we had this big terrace, complete with all the Corbusian colors on the terrace. And because I was a third daughter, they just left me out in the pram on the terrace all the time pretty well. And so I grew up amongst the Corbusian colors. It was very nice. And I don't think I ever had dolls. I played with Meccano we had then, right?
With what? Sorry?
Meccano, it's like...
Yeah.
Anyway, my parents were very outdoorsy, and so we did a ton of hiking, horse riding. And I grew up loving drawing as a child and loving reading. I learned about the world through reading because there were absolutely no mentors in Cape Town, South Africa. There were no women who worked. And also nature. So every day after school, unlike most kids, I would not go to the fridge at home. I'd start in the garden, pick all the edible stuff, and continue through the neighborhood.
Well, what was there that was edible? What were they growing?
Everything. Fresh lemons, which are delicious, Cape gooseberries, peaches, loquats, all kinds of stuff. So that was, and then I'd settle down and read.
Yeah. Well, how nice is that to have a market at home?
Oh, in the neighborhood, it was incredible. At any rate, I had no idea that this life was possible, truly. And I thought when I was young, I'd have to grow up and be like my mother and my older sister and live in a beautiful house on the mountainside overlooking the ocean, which some days actually sounds like a very attractive proposition, to tell you. But I wish there was something else. So here you are, careful what you wish for. So because I loved drawing and I loved the arts and reading and English and all that and history and math and science, what didn't I like? Afrikaans I didn't like.
Drama?
Anyway. My sister actually suggested, have you thought about architecture? I said, that sounds really interesting. But I didn't think it was possible. Anyway, I ended up going to architecture school and it was just like a complete revelation.
Where did you go?
At the University of Cape Town.
Okay.
I was amazing. It kind of blew my head open thinking, but I didn't even think even at that time because people were so backward there. They would say, well, that's a lovely course to do, my dear, but what are you going to do when you finish? Kitchens? They'd say, hopefully, no. So I asked a friend of mine who was in first year, and she looked at me like I was really stupid, and she said, be an architect, of course. Needless to say, she never graduated. But anyway, her advice was great. I know it sounds pathetic in North American terms, but you guys are so lucky having grown up here. So, and then I went to England, and then I started my studies at the University of Cape Town, went to England for a year, and then came to Canada to finish my studies.
I have to tell you that I omitted someone from the list of people that I had spoken with. And as you just described, kitchens and going to university, and it was everything you had looked for, Rick Galazowski, who we had a conversation about kitchens and how when he arrived in university that it was everything he had always longed to do.
Yeah.
Was finally there. So it's great. Okay. So Bruce, please tell us.
Well, my origin story is different. My parents were born in Canada on the West Coast. They were born in Vancouver in what's now Haida. And in the Second World War, they were interned with 22,000 Japanese Canadians.
Wow.
For almost 4 years. And after the war, they were displaced again because they moved from the camps and they took trains across Canada as far east off of the Pacific coast as possible. And they stopped in Hamilton. I asked my mother, why did you stop in Hamilton? And she said, it's quite simple. We were very tired. It was a sunny day. And there was a man at the train station, Union Station, with a sign saying laborers wanted. So they got off. And it's a kind of displaced immigrant story. They rented a house and then they bought a house. I mean, I can't believe it. They bought a house. Our house was $14,000 in the north end of Hamilton, which is where I grew up. And it's interesting because in the north end, there was a kind of very different culture. I would say it's very rugged, very authentic. And you had to stand up for what you believed in. And Shirley's husband is from Hamilton. So we have this kind
the north end.
Cultural connection.
I totally get Bruce.
But I remember going to school with my mother for the very first day I was going to kindergarten. And I had a lot of fear, which is very unusual. And she took me into the school and walked me to the teacher and handed me off. And then I kind of looked around the class and I thought, okay, I think I can handle this. And then by the afternoon, I had the entire class build this wall of blocks. And we were going, what's going on? It was about 4 feet high. I used every wood block in the class and they were working away. And I actually think like in that was kind of an idea, because I was the one who was always organizing everyone around. And I believed I could make them do their best work.
Actually.
There's motions happening
So-
here.
We were all those kids in school.
Yeah.
Yeah. We once compared notes. Yeah.
But I got the commission to do a chalk drawing of Africa, and all the other kids were doing their animals. They did cut paper animals. And then they had to show me their animals because they were going to go up on, the set. And I would look at some of them. I said, "Oh, you can do better than that. You could do a better giraffe." They take them back, and they brought them back, and they were like really good. So I think that this is kind of part of what I was very interested in, was kind of organizing teams, actually. And then I was, when I was a teenager, Raymond Moriyama lived in Hummel, and he actually dated one of my aunts. And he was really starting to make his mark. And in a city where being Japanese was not a lot of fun most of the time, all of a sudden, people were talking about Raymond Moriyama, and I really perked out. I thought, well, this is really interesting, because my father wanted me to be an engineer, and all the other fathers of all the other kids in my school wanted to work at the steel company. They were all at the steel company.
Right.
So I went to the library. We didn't travel. It was very gritty and very industrial. And that's where I really learned a lot of, I think, street smarts, and started playing pool. I won a lot of money, a lot. It was unbelievable. I had a steady income shooting pool. I was the best pool player in Hamilton when I was 17. And then I went to Expo, applied to University of Toronto. It was an incredible revolution in the late 60s.
Did you pay for school with your winnings?
I did.
Unbelievable.
I did, because I was on student loans.
Right.
And I came to U of T with some serious cash.
Yeah.
And I remember on the first day I went to Pope Renfrew and bought a leather jacket. It was $1,000 in 1967.
That's a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. And so I mean,
Nothing's changed. Nothing changed. Sartorial.
But there's a kind of, I would say, certain little entrepreneurial aspect to wanting to earn and win everything, which is what I think I've done, because, my parents gave me everything except money. And then I had two great teachers. One was George Barrett. He died, and we all worked for Bart Myers.
Yep.
And then we worked together.
KPMB has their own lab, a space dedicated to ongoing research and innovation, and that commitment to continuous learning is something I also see in Kaplan's Appliances. Like KPMB, they've been a part of Toronto's design landscape for generations, and what sets them apart is how seriously they invest in education. Their masterclass series brings together the design community to share knowledge, and internally, their training culture ensures their team stays ahead of what's next. I've been a part of those masterclasses myself, sitting in both the audience and also contributing as a guest speaker, and I've seen how valuable they are. Kaplan's isn't just an appliance store. They're a true service partner to the design industry, focused on relationships, promises, and the kind of reliability that makes complex projects run smoothly. That forward-thinking approach is why they've been trusted for so long and why we continue to work with them at Walden Homes. If you want to learn more and get connected with their fantastic team, email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan @waldenhomes.ca. Now, let's go back to the founders.
So that's a perfect segue. Thank you. What I didn't ask, Marianne, was how did you end up in Toronto?
Montreal, there weren't the opportunities.
Okay.
You could feel so I went to London. I worked at Dennis Laston in London for a while, and that I could see that as a Canadian woman, I would get good assignments in the office, but I was never going to get out of the office. I was never going to meet a client.
Right.
And my brother was his cardiologist, and I could see the trajectory of his career. It takes 40 years to become the director of the heart hospital or to get the kind
Right.
of research done that he has. Ultimately, he stuck it out and got there. But it, for me, so I came back to Montreal and, kind of series of romances, bad boyfriends and things like that. So finally I thought I have to go. And I met Barton Myers at a lecture, and he said some things that I thought were really kind of boasting and self-laudatory and familiar with people that had been my professors. I went up to him afterwards. I was like, who do you think you are? And he said, like, who do you think you are? And I said, well, it doesn't really matter. I went to dinner with him. And during the course of the dinner, he said, come and work for me. So well, I just might. So next day,
Love it.
I didn't really have a job. I didn't have a job. I was teaching at McGill, and I came to Toronto. And it's kind of a funny story because I arrived in Toronto when we were at the King and John offices, and I was supposed to meet Barton at 12 o'clock. He invited me for lunch, which was very unusual in the trajectory of things worked. And just as I was approaching the office, a bunch of people came out of and stood on the steps of 322 King, and I waited, and I'd heard rumors of Bruce. I'd heard the rumor. I didn't know very much, but I'd heard. And then I noticed
Bull
Bruce.
shark.
Yeah.
Nice leather
Bull shark,
jacket.
exactly. So I thought, well, just hold back. I'll be 10 minutes late. Let them start off. And then I went in, and Barton was very, and we had these kind of screens in the office, and all I could see is behind the screens, there were people standing outside the conference room while Barton and I had lunch. And that was Vicky and Rosalba. Yeah. So I was like, and I was very Montreal. I had my shirts made by the men's tailor. I had, it was like, it was Montreal. And you come to Toronto, it's a shock. It's a big shock. And it took me, since 1980, it taken me that many years to kind of feel actually at home. But that's how I came. And then these guys were there.
So the two of you had already been there.
There were three of us.
Yeah.
There were four of us altogether, and we were associates of Barton's.
Yeah.
And actually, there were more than that. We sort of.
You were the last to come.
I was the last to come, and probably the closest to being fired.
I would assume that based on the way you said, I just might.
Well, Barton.
There was always a border.
Yeah, he always said to me, stop fighting me. I said, yeah, but Barton, you can't put eaves troughs on a roof like that. They'll get ripped off by the frost. He was from North Carolina or something.
Virginia.
From Virginia.
Yeah.
So he didn't know about, to me, he didn't know about snow and ice, but he would say, stop fighting me. Anyway, we had a pretty good relationship, and I learned everything. I learned a lot in school, but the discipline and the ordering of buildings and the outreach that a building makes to a community, all of that stuff it was incredibly inspirational. I was only there 7 years compared to these guys who had longer tenures, and when Barton said he was going to Los Angeles, we kind of culled to the four of us. We got together and decided we would start a practice February 1st, 1987. We argued about it, either 16 or 18 employees, people that were working 18 employees.
You started off with 16?
Yeah.
You started off the practice with 16 employees?
We inherited.
It was like the coach leaving the team. Barton left the team to move to Los Angeles. He was teaching there.
Yeah.
And
one big project
in California, and one big project, and so in the States, and yeah.
No one's able to leave a practice and just have like a team.
Well, we've since learned that it is a big liability to walk away from a practice because you have all those employees and all their vacation pay and all the insurance and all that stuff.
You have the immediate output.
And he sold us the practice for the depreciated assets. So we were very, very lucky. We split it and off we went. And those, we did a pro forma. I think I did the first pro forma that said we needed $1.2 million to get through the year. And I said, here are the jobs we're going to get. And at the end of the year, we garnered that $1.2 million. But it was none of my list was on that. We just went out and scrambled. And I think you can hear the sort of entrepreneurial spirit. We're from very different backgrounds, and countries and languages and so on. But we're very similar.
We share values, which is very, very important. And when we started, we were very clear. We used to have a thing of projecting every 7 years, which actually is very useful. And we were very clear that there would be absolutely no bread and butter work, for example, that every project, no matter how small, counted.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of it was when we were thinking about creating a practice, we looked at models.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't any practice that we felt we could model ourselves on. So we made it up, a kind of a hybrid, somewhat ambiguous partnership of 4 people. And in a way that served us very well because we didn't fit into conventional slot. We certainly weren't, the practice with the white male architect, male at the top. And it was much.
I want to, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but I want to touch on that really quickly and just say that because I feel like I'm one of the, or on the tail end of that generation that understood what the glass ceiling meant.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems as though the two of you kind of took like an axe and smashed the ceiling.
It's a work in progress. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. I mean, we've, you should go on, but we've broken paradigms. But it was the interesting thing when the 4 of us sat down, we said there are 4 disciplines. There's design, there's production of the drawings, there's marketing, and there's finance. So we said, so who wants to do what? And everybody said, well, wait a minute, nobody wanted to be slotted. So the paradigm breaker was to say 4 partners who would all go out, solicit work, create the work in teams. And I think over the course of the 37 years, we worked together at the beginning because it was the pleasure and because we needed to, and it was, made a lot of sense. But over time, over the 37 years, I think we've all come to a point where each of us is really initiating our work within the culture of the practice, within the vocabulary of the practice in a way, but always competitive to be a little more innovative. And I think the paradigm shifter is that our staff of, now up to 130, they don't work exclusively with one partner. They move around. So there's this sort of cross
pollination.
And which I think is really important because otherwise you'd have the Shirley studio or you'd have the Bruce studio or the Marianne studio. And that would be siloing and it would be...
It's like segregation.
But a lot of practices have that.
Yeah.
And I think they do reasonably well that way, but we've didn't do that. And I'm really appreciative that we didn't open an office somewhere else where we've had, requests to do that. We just said, we'll do all our work from Toronto. We'll work together. We'll argue and support each other, but we'll have, and the staff will move fluidly across and the talent, sort of moves around with us, which is really a great and very different way of setting up a practice.
So, and I apologize. I had cut you off before. But I really wanted to say that because I think that's a major component of what has shaped, and Bruce, not to take away from you and I, but what has also shaped a lot of women and the possibility based on what you had said before.
People think of us as role models. I think Shirley and I agreed that for the first 20 years of the practice, we really worked as though we didn't want to be called women architects. We worked as architects. But in the end, you actually realize that probably doesn't do women in architecture a great service. We're better to identify as women because we have a different point of view. We have a different language and to work collaboratively. So it's been an evolution for us, I would say. Misogyny is built into our culture. We just have to work every day to take it away. And I think, it was part of our lexicon, and so I think it's still an endeavor. And I'm very proud of the women, some of which hopefully you will interview, but the women in practice didn't really see us that way. They saw us as role models, I think, and so they have stood on our shoulders and done things differently.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, before getting into the depths of like what the practice looked like at the very beginning, what did it look like when you were sitting around and trying to plan what this was going to look like before you actually started it on February 1st of 1987?
What did the practice look like?
What did it look like for you
Good.
as
imagine it?
Like did you draw out a business plan? Did you? I see. I asked.
No, I didn't. I thought, I'm so smart. I'm going to just do a business plan. Make it easy. We had good people working with us
think
too.
We shared a really strong vision about what we wanted to do. We knew it was pretty heterogeneous because there were 4 of us. I think when we decided to set up our own practice, I know Martin said that he was pretty confident that we would do well. That's what he said. And he said, I think you can do a lot more and that you will do well. And then never spoke to us for 35 years.
Crazy.
Very good. Right? The market our timing was excellent.
You were just ahead of the recession.
Yeah, it was a recession.
Yeah, we went through the
Prior to-
recession.
Like when we started.
Well, governments were actually funding projects during the recession because they were smarter in those days. So it was good.
No, because
I mean, the things that we believed in started with the quality of the work itself. I mean, the finished built work
Yeah.
is really everything. You know, it's now not everything. But it was when we started that the idea that you would get published was like a big deal.
Right.
And awards were a big deal.
Yep.
They're less so now. Okay, and so you're talking about a practice forming at the end of the 20th century, and then we had to compete against all the other architectural firms that were larger, more corporate, more singular, and we had to constantly describe ourselves in proposals, like why we're different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not changed because I think over so many years, you're still trying to differentiate yourself. But our differentiator was the quality of the work. And that's what we believed in. And that everything counted because we didn't have anything. So every single piece of work had to be really, really good. And then I think it was really about just having a kind of sense of, I mean, this is sort of unusual. I think our firm has been very aware of context in the broadest sense of cultural context. I think we're really great urbanists. I really do. I think our buildings are different than other people's buildings. And some of our clients have told us that they think they feel smarter in our buildings. That's really interesting to think about. Why did they say that?
and they were New York clients.
And it has to do with they could appreciate, I think, the kind of certainty and intelligence of the designs that they were in. It made them
Elevated.
carried themselves.
And the natural light.
Okay, so that was something that we didn't see everyone else. Like you see really good design, beautiful design. I'm not sure if those projects are doing what I think our projects are doing. Our projects kind of are give people a kind of chiropractic adjustment in terms of how they are. And we've heard this again and again and again from our institutional clients, from, they just think there's something different. We think that's really worth discussing. Like, what makes KPMB different than all those other firms? We think we know, and I think that's really worth exploring.
And from our social housing projects, one of our first one, my project architect was on site doing deficiencies, and you ever heard tenants who just moved into, it was TCH, affordable housing.
Yeah.
This project has changed my life. And that's the way we approach all of that.
Yeah. So when you say they had to be very, very good, it was beyond design and the look and feel. It was like how those projects work for the clients, how it changes their image and identity, how they think of themselves, how they build on who they are. And it's transformative. And, that takes a lot of digging, a lot of intuition, a lot of curiosity, and then the talent of the office as well to kind of coalesce around how something's going to work. Whether it's a renovation, like when you spoke about Massey Hall, that's a renovation. It took the sensitivity to understand what to keep and what has been
Which is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah. It was it's an edit. It's a big edit.
Yeah.
A smart edit. And then you were also doing things where you create new environments for as Bruce says, for people to, inhabit and feel smarter and feel elevated, and that they can, it should increase productivity. It should be all of those things, build community. So much of our work is not private little things identified for one or two people.
Right.
We've done a couple of some houses, but the highest and best use is where you can touch a bigger community, where you can actually influence, where you can change people's lives through all the work that we do. And I think, that's, what a privilege, right?
Totally.
We are so lucky.
I have to ask you this question. This is open to the three of you, so you can look each other in the eye to decide who wants to answer it. Who was involved in sales in the beginning? Was it all of you out there?
All of us.
Hard at it, competitively hard at it.
All of us.
Yeah.
We had we were smart enough and lucky enough to have some outside consultants. Nina Wright, arts and communications counselors, who really gave us a lot of advice about communication and presentations. And she also knew everyone in the cultural sector. I would say our trajectory comes out of that from Barton for sure, because he was doing projects in the arts.
Mhm.
But Nina actually kind of launched us onto a bigger stage, I think, for each of us individually, how to present.
And
We used to present, do dry runs
in front of
in front of her. She'd just say, stop.
So how did that relationship form? How?
Well, she's a very, very close friend of my husband's.
Okay.
And I always thought she was absolutely a magician. She's an incredibly wise woman, New Yorker originally.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how
We just began bringing her in. I mean, she was quite pricey per hour, but we'd actually write down everything she said, because every line she said, and she would ask us, so we'd start our presentation and then she'd say, no, stop. I'm going to get you to answer the hard questions.
Yeah.
You know, go right to the hard question, not all this mush. No, I was looking at, she even said, oh, your cups and saucers are disgusting. Remember, get rid of all this china and get some decent looking stuff in here. Be who you are.
Right. And I think that spirit also is why, in a way, our partnership has survived so long, longer than most marriages. Because unlike
A lot longer than
a
most.
lot longer, and none of us were married to each other when we started, which was very unusual at the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's because, in a way, we're like siblings. We're a really good dysfunctional family, really, really good. And we're able to disagree with each other, to talk it out, to argue, to put forward different points of view. We always come to an agreement. We've never had to vote on anything.
I feel like that is the definition of a functional family. The dysfunctional family is the one that can never come to the agreement.
I know, but
That's what I hate that word dysfunctional. I've always resented it. So
Because I find like most of the time is
aren't
that
all families dysfunctional?
No, not mine.
That's
Those
the
are the
beauty.
interesting ones.
that may be.
They're all those are the functional families. The
Yeah.
ones that openly discuss the issues that are in front of them that are
Yeah.
presented are the ones that are able to work through them and then find a solution to the problem. The dysfunctional families
No, I
are the
don't.
ones you don't hear them talking.
I joke, but
Yeah.
yes.
38 years.
No, but seriously.
I'll sit in my place.
Yes, it's very interesting, and we've actually had clients. I remember Bruce and I, when we were working together years ago, we worked for Princeton, and together on the projects, and they really liked having the two of us there because we didn't always agree. Sorry, and they liked that discourse.
Hmm. Well, because it drives you.
Yeah.
The first idea is never the best idea.
Sometimes you come all the way around and back to it.
come back
Has
to
all
it
the
quite
sweating.
often.
I had to throw it out there to see what kind of reaction I got. I got the reaction I thought I'd get.
No, but here's another thing about our firm that I like that continues. All the projects have an idea.
Mhm.
Some are big ideas. Some are really big ideas. Okay. But a lot of architects have like incredible concepts. And then as they get developed down to the details and to constructions, they actually are less than the big idea. And I think our thing is like this.
Yeah.
We launch and we just go at it and at it and at it. And money is never the driver, hasn't been. And it's just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. One of the reasons our buildings are so good is that there's a lot of time that's gone into them.
Mm-hmm.
Our dust projects, a lot of them were on hold for years and then came back and then were built.
Right.
And they're very complicated. And I look at other people's buildings, I don't see the level of complexity or I could draw a graph of performance of design over a building. That's a really good idea, really badly executed, or that's a good idea, really well executed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, think about that, because it's not like it's the full spectrum of the life of a building. And then I think more and more from the 20th century into the 21st, we're very interested in the life of our buildings and the impact that they have going forward. And we're not alone; other people are.
Yeah.
But the feedback that I get is like we've done our work well. From all sorts of clients who've been in their buildings for like 15 years, and they're still talking about
The impact of them on them.
And when we talk about the level of complexity, steel is often at the heart of it. That's where Rotberg Steel has been such a critical partner for us at Walden Homes. On so many of our infill and renovation projects, They've provided everything from lintels and structural columns to plates and rebar. They're not just fabricators, they bring a mindset of problem solving, simplifying structure where possible to reduce cost while never taking away from its strength. The way they coordinate shop drawings and work seamlessly with installation crews gives us confidence when we're dealing with structural backbone of a project. Like KPMB, Rotberg is a family business in that the staff who have been with them for decades shows a stability in the way that they deliver. They become one, a unit. And I know that at KPMB, they've had people there for decades as well. Rotberg, they're like a partner we return to again and again because we trust them. So if you're interested in learning more about Rotberg Steel, please email me. It's Jonathan, JONATHAN @waldenhomes.ca. And I'm happy to introduce you to Brett and their fantastic team. But for now, back to the founders.
So I want to ask you this. Do you remember the first really grand project that you won independently?
Kitchener City Hall.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you remember what it was like when they said that they had selected you? Do you remember when was it a phone call? Was it a person?
It was a phone call.
Okay. So
for Kitchener City Hall, it was a competition, like in our second year of practice.
Yeah.
There were over 300. It was an open 300 entries.
National competition,
National
anonymous.
City Hall.
Anonymous.
And then it became known when she got to the short list.
Yeah.
But when I was working for Byron, we'd lost so many competitions to Moshe Safdie, basically the Ottawa City Hall. It's just on and on. So when we had a chance for Kitchener, we said we're going to win this. We're just going to win.
It had a good jury, and that was very important that you had smart people making the decision. So that's something we always look at. And if you have people who don't understand,
you change the jury, you change the result.
So question I have that kind of piggybacks off this is, what was involved in the application process for the RFP on this? Like, was it?
It was open.
I know. There was no, like,
no,
they didn't give you
forms? There's in that you would have had like 20 firms.
Okay.
But this was an open design competition.
Okay.
And I think it was restricted to Canadians.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. A brief and a program, and that was it, and a great jury.
Yeah,
have we done one of those since? I don't think there has been one since in that format, because as you say, the RFP, this whole thing of, it's so laborious what the world does to architects, looking for a great design. They put us through this RFP process, which is they ask you to show your buildings built in the last 5 years. Well, our great buildings go back 25 years, so it's nincompoop to say.
And they're still performing.
And they're still performing, people still love them. But the RFP process, then it culls, and they're the big firms and the small firms, the middle firms. It's painful and frankly not smart. And it's a great waste of time and energy, get to know the people that are going to be your architects and make that decision.
We combat this on a regular basis. So we lose projects all the time based on price.
Yeah.
It's just based on price. There's nothing to do with the quality of the individuals that you're about to go and work with.
And certain architects drive the fees down by putting the low bid, and then they have a whole FTE, a whole full-time employee who does nothing but look for the extras.
Right.
And so in the end, I'm sure it's greater than.
Right.
We try to be more straightforward, and that's where we've been successful, is when people actually look at what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the industry, the profession itself. It's become an industry. The profession itself hurts itself very badly. We would be better if we worked more closely together and more allied in valuing the service that we bring. Let all flowers bloom, as Philip Johnson said.
Yeah. So what did it look like from a conceptual standpoint, having won that project? Was there, did you ring a bell? Did that phone go down and you just turn around and just threw your hand? Like, what did you do?
All of that.
I'm going to play pool.
No, because I got the phone call and I just said, we won. Mm-hmm. And that changed our office. Yeah. We went from, the continuing firm of Bart Myers, and we were up, and we always tried to find out why we never made other shortlists before that. We were trying to get on all these projects. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of architects ahead of us. And I think Winning Kitchener just kind of vaulted us up into another echelon so we could compete.
Because it was so clean too. There's so much, there's politics and there's, I like her and I don't like him or something. It was very, very clean.
And totally. So you win that project, everyone gets excited, and then you're like, oh, we're going to have to go execute on this, which is part of the fun. Did you have to go from a practice of 16 to 30, 40?
We had 16 or 20 people working on Kitchener alone.
Right.
And a lot of those people are still in our office.
Yes.
Several of them.
So can I ask, from an operational standpoint, you win that, and the money for something like this doesn't come in right away, right? This is over time. And so when you need to now staff up, there's the associated.
We had a controller.
Okay.
She didn't want to be called Daphne Harris. She didn't want to be called a CFO or any of their director of finance. She's a controller. And it always was kind of magic, the way you could lose money on projects and still be in business, still get paid and hire more people. And it was, I would say we've never had to sort of bust our butts on the business part of it as we become bigger, but things kind of almost magically worked, unless you guys were doing it and I didn't notice.
No, I think we realized when we started to compete on projects, we were competing against like apples against oranges, firms that were very, very different and would undercut their fees. And so, of course, we'd never win because they do crappy buildings. We didn't want to go there. And then we realized we're not for everyone. And then it all changed and we won Kitchener City Hall, but you can't run an office on one project.
Of course.
So we had the residual AGO win when we were with Barton Myers. And then we were doing the Hasbro corporate headquarters in Rhode Island with Barton Myers, and I was the associate on it. And when we went on our own, after a few meetings, the CEO gave it to us to do the rest of the project.
Four of us had to go to New York, and he lived in the MoMA Tower, Museum of Modern Art Tower. But we had to go and present ourselves to him, Stephen.
And so we were four very different people. And so we went around and he said, well, how will I decide? Who decides who I'll work?
That was at the beginning.
That was at the beginning. It was kind of a good story though, right? It's a good story. So you had two men and two women and everybody started.
He said, he wanted to know who was going to
work.
And I said, say Shirley.
Right. It worked out very well.
Well, there was a real affinity. He said at the end, sort of in the process, he said, Shirley knows more about my business than I do. And he was a super smart guy.
Oh,
he was amazing.
That's the thing. We have learned so much from our clients. Steve and Hasenfeld.
Yeah.
All of them.
All of them.
Princeton was remarkable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But I think every one of our clients has been people who bought into how we work and how we do things. And, guys like Peter Simon, raising whatever it was, the 100+ millions. And I said to him, Peter, I don't envy you getting up every day knowing what was ahead of us, because that project got stalled because we had to find the money. And even when we found the money, we only had 50% of what maybe was required. And he said, oh, no, he said, piece of cake. We'll get there. Don't worry about that. Just keep drawing. Just keep drawing. We'll get there.
Bob Servant at the ballet school, he said, we heard they were, under pressure to reduce the cost of the building. And I was in a meeting and I said, well, just take the top level studio off. And he turned to me and he said, no, we've done our utilization case. And by the way, let me look after that.
Right.
He really understood. He was one of the great clients.
He really was.
So we had what we call the cultural renaissance, is when the government invested $400 million, expecting that the institutions, if you declared what the cost of your rebuild was or your new institution, and you would be funded 40% of the cost. And so giving 40%, when in our past or earlier lives, the government had given 90, 60, and suddenly it's down to 40. That's getting 40% is just enough to get into terrible trouble. So we won these 5 cultural renaissance projects, which was kind of amazing because we were all out there. So the ballet school, the Gardner, the Royal Conservatory, throw TIFF into that, TIFF, and then there
Roy
was
Thompson.
and Soul Pepper Theater, the theaters,
Soul
and Roy Thompson. So that was shocking. Like there were only 7 or 9, depending on how you count them. And we just, I mean, that really, from Kitchener City Hall to doing those projects, just was an incredible launch for all of us. We were just all heads down, and we didn't do anything else for that. Variously.
But I think we've spoken a lot about the past, but I think what distinguishes us.
That's where we're gonna go next. So why don't you go for it?
Go for it. Yeah.
What distinguishes us is we have never rested on our laurels. We challenge each other, which is great.
Yeah.
Seriously, we do challenge each other daily, which is terrific. That really spurs us on. And we have been very nimble, always. A lot of architects might complain bitterly when they're faced with value engineering. For us, the building always gets better.
Mm-hmm.
You just adjust. You don't fight your clients. You try to understand what they need. And that's actually design, solving seemingly opposing problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we've also very much embraced is, particularly through our KPMB lab, is trying to do our absolute best to mitigate carbon emissions as much as we possibly can. Every project counts on that, so we take that very, very seriously. Social justice projects. As a student in South Africa, I can regale you for hours with stories about what we did to oppose apartheid. It was a lot of fun because I was at a very liberal university. Almost got killed, but hey,
What's living without that?
It was exhilarating. And so I've kind of found that again in Canada. And I'm really passionate about that kind of work. Yeah, so it's this coming from different places, but meeting in terms of how we want to go forward in the future. It's been very powerful, I think.
And I think one of the things that we've been able to do in the last few years, as the firm has grown, we've had to change COVID was a big blow. You get through it very successfully, but maybe it was not practice as usual, but we were very lucky to have some big clients that said, keep going, but it wasn't the same. And now I think we've finally recovered from COVID, kind of reknit the culture of the people in the office together. And I think, this is a great luxury now to look forward and see how do we bring in new partners. And I thought you were going to talking about the future, because I'm
gonna go there.
Yeah, should I go there?
No, I want to ask you this specific question. That is, I think that one of the hardest transitions in a career, without having experienced it for myself, is the knowledge that at some stage of your career, you're going to either sell or you're going to hand over shares of your company to a new group of people potentially. And what is that going to look like? And what's going to happen with what we have created? And it's not just a baby. Like, this isn't you have an adult, right? That you're handing over.
Yeah. Don't remind us.
Yeah, right.
But in all honesty,
I think that just as we've done everything differently from saying at the beginning, Kuwabara, McKenna, Blumberg Architects, they said, you can't say that. We said, well, that's what we're going to do. KPMB now for short. But I think we've done things differently. And so we're looking at it very, very, very hard. And we have selected new partners, and it's a mentoring, even though they've worked with us for some 20, 25 years, some of them, they have to assume new roles, and we have to assume new roles the way you must. And I think, the biggest thing is that we stay knitted together, that we don't sort of go off independently, the new partners either, that there's a lot to learn. We're feeling very much now the legacy. So when you said this was a bit of a legacy, it is an opportunity, but to get the legacy of the practice, the buildings that we've built that are still almost 100% all standing and active and viable pieces of architecture, and share the lesson of those. But you can't, they've had to find their own experiences. But I think that's the stage where we're at, and it's quite exciting. We don't, just as I say, we haven't done it the way other firms have done, and we're not selling. We're going forward in a different mode.
And this is really focusing on the culture of the practice and the standards of the practice and the involvement and engagement of people who, some of them began here as students long time ago. And so what's kind of interesting is that we've had incredible longevity of a lot of our core staff. We've attracted people from other offices and other countries, actually, to really strengthen I think they really give us the ability to be very sharp at 130 people. I think a lot of us, I mean, I for one, as soon as I remember when we had 40 people, we sort of shuddered. We said, oh my goodness, this is really, and then it was 60 people, then 80, then it was 90, and for sure we'll never be over 100. And then all of a sudden they're over 100. And it seems to be thriving and being able to kind of, it's a challenge, right? Like I can see how some boutique firms where they're very small, and you have one client, one contractor, 2 people on the team to do a really good piece of architecture. We don't know what it means, but it can be really, really great. And that's why the design awards, a lot of the awards, it would be interesting, at least 50% of the awards have gone to houses, at least, maybe more. Okay, for us, the challenge as we have grown is the size and complexity of our buildings has grown, and the size and complexity of our staff that's grown with it, so that you maintain. I mean, this is the crux of it. Like, can you maintain that standard?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, as you pointed out, a lot of alumni have graduated from KPMB, and we love seeing that. It's a pleasure to see the quality of work that came out of the people, and some of them are doing some of the best work, really great. But our project continues, which is a very complex response. I think we've, more than any firm our size, we respond to the issues of our time. And I think really great architecture has always done that. You're sensing, like, the question's always been, does architecture reflect society or not? Like, who are we designing these buildings for? Ourselves? And I think our firm has, what I like about our firm is that it's actually squared up to the issue. And I think there's a change. We haven't given up on any of our education or our interest in form and building. I mean, I think we're well schooled, but what's really interesting is being able to move that to address really complex issues of truth and reconciliation, social justice, accessibility, affordability.
And the idea of creating something that feels like it belongs, like it's always been there, is something I also see in the work of Aquanta Pools. They bring biodesign technology developed in Italy and apply it here in Canadian climates. The material they use can expand up to 300 times per foot, which makes it adaptable to almost any condition, whether that's tree roots, bedrock, or soil that isn't ideal. What's unique about their approach is how they manage the build. As a part of their process, they construct a temp structure over the pool site so they can hit their timelines and deliver without disruption. When they leave, the pool is integrated seamlessly into the landscape, designed to work with the site rather than against it. That combination of design sensitivity and technical capability is what makes them stand out, different than some other pool suppliers that are out there. If you want to learn more, email me. It's Jonathan, JONATHAN, at waldenhomes.ca, and I'm happy to connect you with Yuri and his team. For now, let's get to the conclusion with the founders.
Well, and to me, I mean, these are all really amazing buzzwords, but you've also lived it. Like, this is the epitome of being able to understand and recognize the importance of being able to fulfill those challenges in society when you talk about your parents being in a camp and living in an apartheid or near to, right?
No,
in. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
And I didn't tell you about previous generations who were all killed.
What they were dealing with,
So, yeah.
right? And there was massive. We haven't talked about this either, but at the time in Montreal, the mob was running Montreal.
I wasn't involved.
I'm not saying that you were. I'm just saying.
But I did say no. But Montreal was, that the whole. I'm a bit of a displaced person, not to the extent that Shirley or Bruce are, but I couldn't stay in Quebec. Marianne McKenna, I was not really. I'm bilingual, but it was not my fight.
Yeah,
it was not my fight. So getting out of there and coming here, I thought I'd have all the opportunities that I might have had because of my birthright,
Right.
zero here. So
with that said, there was a question that I was posed with. Same gentleman that I opened with, Rob. I had asked him, do you have a question? And so Rob asked, KPMB has an extensive portfolio of work and project types. So what would be a project type that the firm has not yet done, but would love to do in the future?
Spiritual building.
I'm doing a church, Cheryl.
I know, but it's
It's a church.
company. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So yeah, well, we probably each have one.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
church.
Okay, so
I'd love to do that. Yeah.
to do a spiritual building of
Of any kind.
any kind.
It doesn't have to be organized religion. Yeah.
Anywhere in the world? Is there a specific place that you would? Okay, I like that. Bruce? I know it's an
I
open.
don't know. I mean, I'm working on, this kind of goes full circle, but I'm working on a monument for the Japanese Canadians who were interned in the war, 22,000 names. And it's in Victoria, British Columbia. And so to me, it's spiritual, and it's,
Oh.
like if you look even at the mock-up that we have, like my family's on the wall. And so this is a project I never imagined would ever happen. And so in a way, because I always wanted to do something that was connected to my origins, but there was never an opportunity. I mean, worked on the Japanese Canadian Cultural Center with Shirley, and it's a great project, but this one's different.
And in a sense, the closest I've come to my wish. Bruce and I are kind of going back in our roots. We won the international design competition for the new building for the Montreal Holocaust Museum. And that's my history. So that's been...
I think that in its way is as small as spiritual.
Yes.
And a kind of full circle.
Full
Yeah,
circle.
it really is. It
Well,
really is, yeah.
Marianne's working at Yale. I think there's a kind of circularity there. I mean, you must feel very satisfied. Must be satisfying to be doing the thing there.
I'll ask the question. Are you satisfied?
I'm terrified.
Well,
It's a big campus. I'm doing the Yale Dramatic Arts building and the Yale Repertory Theater all in one, a 210,000 square foot building. And it has some big ideas in it. And it has, every project, even though there's really a great funding available, it's hugely challenging. So I didn't know this is what I wanted to do, but it does bring my kind of career and performance and my tenure at Yale, and allows me to give back where I came from.
Yeah. I'm going to say this to anyone that is listening now, that if you're a student, if you're an intern architect, a junior architect, an intermediate architect, you have to understand if you're pursuing a potential career in design, that at no stage of your life does it come to a head where you have fulfilled all of your requirements. It doesn't. You can hear it right now.
That's what makes it so extraordinary.
Architecture
is always challenging.
Yeah.
And you're always learning. And I just love that.
Life begins when you make a commitment. And the amazing thing, it doesn't end. Like we do a lot of work to keep ourselves in the best shape possible, because I think we need to be strong and live longer.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I would say this, it's hard. Architecture's, some people, like I would say like Andrew Hill, he's particularly adroit. He's prolific. I'm not sure how hard he understands what I'm talking about. Okay. And I love him, and I think he's a great architect, and I talk to him a lot. But I think the thing about our firm is we've faced up to a whole bunch of really big challenges. And it's very difficult when we see another architect's building that's really great, really well done. Mm-hmm. You just have to really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we're not full of our own architecture. That's the last thing. I mean, there's so many good, really great architects. It's just that I think we're very unusual.
Yeah.
Very unique.
I am remiss to say that I don't have a lot more time with you right now, as much as I would love to, and I'd love to continue chatting. So I would like to thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart for you taking the time to come together. Bruce, you had said at the beginning that you can't think of a time the three of you had sat down together to be able to go and have a discussion about the practice.
Well, interviewed.
Well, so I left that part out. It's true. Yeah, it's true. It's true. No, it's
We're very
true.
busy at it. It's a lot to talk about.
I left that part out. That's an important key element of the of this. But so I am humbled by the fact that you were able to commit to this and to sit around and share in the smiles. And I'm just going to say this, that we had oriented this table in a way that and purposefully that you could see each other as you spoke, so that you could feed off of each other, and it's an important element to all of this. I am honored that you have taken the time to do this. I greatly appreciate it, and I look forward to, and I hope that the rest of you listening right now look forward to, this is part 1 of a feature on KPMB. So stay tuned, because part 2 and part 3 are going to be fantastic, as this was. So
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.